All right, how are we all doing?
Yeah, those were really fun.
Those were good?
Yeah.
They were okay at least? They were bearable? Okay, cool. So what were some interesting things that came up or things that you were uncertain about or the major thoughts that bubbled up? Yeah.
Signs and symptoms.
Oh, yeah. Signs and symptoms are really hard. So, yes.
Do you want me to make some 38 copies of it?
I will send them all in the electronic copy of it. Yes. So you will get a copy of that sheet so you have it. But so a sign is like, you can think of a sign as being like a thing the insect literally produced of its body, right? So it could be webbing, it could be a leg, it could be poop, it could be slime, because slime is coming off the body, right? It could be anything like that. Whereas a symptom is, like it said, a plant's reaction. And so where that can be confusing is like when we get to things like galls. But if you think about it, the gall is plant tissue. You don't see, the insect caused it, but it didn't make it of its body. Does that help at all?
What did make of its body? The insect or
The plant.
the gall?
The plant made the gall.
But not the insect.
No, so what the insect does, and this is actually really cool, this is a gross simplification, but the way galls are made is the insect comes, lays the egg, and then that's such an irritant and other things to the plant, and it like also in some cases the insects are causing the disordered growth of the plant, that then the plant basically makes like a tumor around that place.
It's kind of like a pearl from a tree.
Yeah, it's like a pearl from a tree, right? Where like, yes, there is a true irritant at the middle of that pearl, but everything of the pearl that you're seeing was made by the oyster, right? So everything of the gall that you're seeing was made by the plant in response to the insect poking it, basically.
And in other cases where it's a symptom, there's damage to the plant, and that's what the plant, so it's direct damage is a symptom, but the plant reacting to something could be a sign?
Is a symptom.
Okay, so a gall is a symptom.
A gall is a symptom, chew marks are a symptom. If I find chew marks with poop right next to them,
Yeah.
I have a symptom and a sign. The poop is the sign, the chew marks are the symptom.
Last one, I'll let it go. And the,
Yeah, you
the
keep going.
exercise over there was pine bark that had burrowing in it, and it said it was a sign. But at first, with that
Yeah.
chew marks and that evidence of something like that, it seemed like it would be a symptom.
I would feel like that was a symptom. If they were actually saying that, there's like insect debris in those burrows, like if there's poop in those burrows, if there's other like shed skins, if there's that kind of stuff, you have signs and symptoms
Got it.
together.
Okay. But
And
burrowing might be a symptom.
Typically it's going to be more like a symptom
Okay.
because it's kind of like, it's like chew marks, right? Burrowing is kind of like chew marks in a way, right? Where what we're seeing is we're seeing the damage left by the activity. Does that make sense? Yeah, and so typically when we're going to be thinking about signs and symptoms that's a little bit of like a plant disease and insect clinic type thing. Like we think about things that way. So like Matt Bertone would really care about signs versus symptoms. For most of us, what we want to be able to know is that, okay, if I see a whole bunch of caterpillar poop, I'm feeling very good that it's caterpillars. If I see a bunch of chew marks, that's not actually telling me directly what insect it is. It's telling me that it was done by an insect with chewing mouth parts, but it doesn't tell me the direct insect in most cases. And so oftentimes we'll get calls or emails or questions that are like, here's a bunch of chewing damage. What did this? Or here's a bunch of, 100%. Yeah, it's like a bad picture of a leaf with chewing damage. And they're like, what happened? I don't know, you forgot to clean your lens? So like, there could be chewing damage and then they ask what it is, or there can be chewing damage and then there's maybe a ladybug next to it. And they say, did the ladybug do this? And even though beetles often have chewing mouth parts, ladybugs don't eat leaves. And so a lot of times people will get confused that just because they see an insect next to damage, they assume that insect did that damage. And so part of what we need to be able to step in and say like, no, that's probably not that. Like leave that, in most cases, leave that poor insect alone. It was just minding its own business, like next to a crime scene, right? Like it didn't do it. So, but yeah, it's a hard distinction. But so like if we are, and I'll send you guys the link to the Plant Disease and Insect Clinic page so you can check it out more. But that's a really, really, really cool resource where we can submit samples ourselves, we can help clients submit samples, and so all these things that we're not sure about, you might get a question and you don't know. And if you really don't know, then you send it to me. And if I really don't know, we send it over to the clinic, and they basically always know in like 30 seconds, right? Because this is what they do. They sit over in a little lab doing that all day. Yeah.
If you send this a leaf
sample that has had some sort of bug on it,
Yeah.
will the bug live?
Oftentimes it will, or oftentimes, if the insect was there, it will live. A lot of times too, they'll be able to see, maybe the insect's not there, but actually maybe there are shed exoskeletons there, maybe there's frass there that's diagnostic, maybe it's just that they know that typically this type of plant is getting damaged by this insect, so they can put that together. This is just like botany, this is just like plant ID, right, where it feels huge and vast and unknowable, and then you start learning little facts about it, and you start constructing your understanding, and again, more stuff starts sticking, right? Once you've learned a couple things, it's a lot easier to learn the next couple things. And so, they are very, very fast because they do this all day. I have a little bit of a background in entomology, and so at this point, can run through it pretty quickly. And you can get that way too. It's just a matter of practicing it, and understanding it. And, okay, what else bubbled up?
Would disease be abiotic or biotic?
I don't even know what viruses are up to. Say that because, I don't know. Viruses are not considered living. Yeah.
Technically living things.
Yeah. So, but disease we typically think of as biotic.
Okay.
So abiotic is going to be, it drowned because there was too much rain. It dried out because there wasn't enough rain. It blew over by the wind. You accidentally sprayed herbicide on it. Those are what we think of typically as the abiotic things. But disease and we have a fair bit of those, right? That happens. Disease and pests are what we typically consider the biotic ones. Yeah, and the reason that that's really important is because biotic and abiotic also look very different in the environment. So if you ever see a problem that hits multiple species, or if you see a problem that occurs in a lawn in a straight line, these are abiotic things, right? Like a human messed up somewhere, or something really changed about the environment, right? Because nature we don't typically see multiple species being hit. We don't see straight lines. We don't see right angles. That's like a hose got left in the lawn or something, right? That's more of those kind of answers. All right, what else is bubbling up?
Metamorphosis, incomplete versus complete.
Yeah.
That's a doozy for me.
It's a doozy, for sure. So, well, I'll just talk about it this way. The way I like to, what's getting you? If I can.
Understanding why there can be nymphs. I don't know. I get just pupa stage versus nymph stage versus
Yeah, it's like botany
the
all over again.
infancy stage
Yeah.
is really getting me. I don't understand the infancy
Yeah.
between egg and then adult.
Yeah.
That's a gray area.
For sure. So this is kind of botany all over again, right? This is term heavy, and that can be part of the confusion for sure. So when we think about incomplete metamorphosis, this is going to be things like bugs, cockroaches, any number of different things. Grasshoppers go through this sort of process. I like to think of humans as going through incomplete metamorphosis, right? We are born and we look like small versions of humans. I have a 1-year-old right now, so I know that he looks like a human, but he doesn't look. His proportions are weird, right? He's a good-looking dude, but his proportions are weird, right? So they look the same, but there can be very big differences, right? Maybe they're totally different colors, maybe whatever else is going on, and then that's a nymph, right? And then the next phase gets bigger and looks more adult. The next phase gets bigger and looks more adult. And then you have an adult, right? It's getting bigger, and the body shape and coloring is looking more and more adult each step.
Okay.
Those are typically what we're thinking of when we think of nymphs. And complete metamorphosis. Incomplete metamorphosis, we don't do anything like that. This is where you have a phase in your life cycle where you essentially melt your body down to goo and rebuild it, right? That's weird. So if you think about that, the egg hatches, and you get a caterpillar or a grub or a maggot, right? These are all words for kind of these larval forms of complete metamorphosis. The caterpillar does get bigger in stages, right? It's born and it's what we're called early instar, bigger instar, bigger instar, bigger instar. But then it gets to a point where it gets a signal through all these really intricate hormone signaling that it's time to have somehow a protective hard outer casing and to melt basically everything down. Some muscular tissue remains, and actually what really builds the new body is specialized populations of stem cells that were set aside in the very earliest development of the egg. It then rebuilds the whole body from those specialized stem cell populations. And then it emerges as an adult. Right? So this would be like if instead of adolescence, we became pod people and like came out crabs. Right? Like it would just be like, you're just like, it's different, right?
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So complete is completely different.
Completely different.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can, that's acceptable? Okay. All right, what else? Yeah.
What do you think the point of metamorphosis is?
Oh my God, okay.
The meaning of life.
The meaning of life.
Most things kind of have a reason, sort of, at least people
Yeah.
assign something to it, but I'm trying to figure out why do they go through these complete recreations? Does it somehow preserve the animal to do that, or?
It can be very helpful that way. So, for example, a lot of butterflies, moths, things actually overwinter in the soil in their cocoon phase. That's why we need to leave leaf litter, for example, is because a lot of things overwinter. And so it gives you a really good pause. So a lot of animals have kind of evolved pause phases, right? Where you're allowed to get through a season that maybe you couldn't get through because it's too harsh, like winter, because you're in this protected phase. So that's certainly a benefit. The evolution of complete metamorphosis is pretty wild, and they don't really understand it quite yet. But the idea is basically that something happened with the hormone signaling where, I have to remember this, and this is probably like 80% right. A whole bunch of juvenile phases that should have happened in the egg are happening in a different order, and everything got kind of stretched out in a weird way that is like people are not totally clear on. There was a huge controversy in the scientific community, it must have been like 15 or 20 years ago now, where somebody who had no business publishing this paper, but they were friends with the editor, said that it was because like a butterfly had mated with a worm a million years ago. Yeah, that was a proud day in entomology. But they don't really know why. But I do think it helps to have those pause steps, right? Anytime you can have a protected pause phase, that's really useful. That's what a seed is, essentially. It's a protected phase that you can get through different environmental conditions until the environment is ready, right? A whole bunch of nematodes have a phase like that too, called dower, where if they get stress signals, they enter into like a hold, and they don't really do anything. And then when the environment gets better, they can come back alive, and they can be stored in the freezer for years in dower, right? So it could be that. It could be that. Yeah. All right, bubbling up.
What's a nematode again?
Worm. No, it's a tiny to big. I don't know exactly where it fits, but it's like in the worm typey things. I can look that up. The worm typey things. It's the technical. Yeah. Most nematodes are really not a problem. Some of them really give plant roots the business. Yeah. All right. So again, you guys, this is like botany, it's like soils, it's like a lot of what you're going to learn here, right? You do not have to remember all the details, you just have to remember that the details exist. You might not even remember specific details, so even if you just knew the details exist, and they're in our book, or we can ask, or we can research about them, right? Like that's really what we're trying to expose you to. In our follow-up email, I'm also going to include a link to a recording of an entomology talk that I do that is a little bit more insects broadly. Matt does, a lot of really, really excellent individual insect ID. This is kind of like the theory of insects with a little bit of insect ID if you want to take another stab at this or you want to come at it from a different direction. So you'll get that. But I think yes.
So the net, I have a mentor who would say you try not to intervene
Yes.
as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because even if it's a pest, a lot of times there's another pest that will take care of that pest.
Yeah, 100%. And so like even when we think about like some of the really bad aphid problems, these are a great example. Aphids are typically a really big problem because plants are stressed, especially like in greenhouse conditions. Once you take them outside, a lot of times they can push through it pretty quickly. So you might even get a plant with aphids and then can push through it. And then the other side of it is once you have enough aphids, they emit pheromones too that ladybugs smell. So if you're always killing all your aphids, they're never going to be releasing the ladybug attractants. Their predators never come, right? If you actually let that aphid population get big enough, that's when the predators come and destroy all of them, right? So in general, I think one of the things to think about is that, and we're going to do a little bit more, we're still going to talk about our initial projects, but what Matt was saying, the best thing we can do for our plants to prevent damage is keep them healthy. And often, once damage is on a plant, you cannot reverse that damage. You can only prevent further damage. So if you had an insect come through and do a whole bunch of damage, but now that part of that insect's life cycle is over, there is no value in treating for that anymore, because if the caterpillars are gone, now you've got butterflies. And there's no use in stressing over the damage, because the damage is done. You cannot fix those leaves so they're no longer damaged. The best you can do is get that plant through the year so that next year when it leaves out again, it's got fresh new leaves. Right? Every leaf by the end of the season looks bad. We're not going to prevent that. We're just trying to keep the plants healthy. Yeah. Okay, so switching gears a little bit. I wanted to take a little bit of time to do Q&A, musings, concerns about initial projects. You guys had a chance to look through a couple of them. You might be thinking about kind of what you're going to focus your project on already. You might have a site in mind. You might realize you really need to change your site, at which point I suggest getting your soil sample in like tomorrow. Do we have any questions that have come about the initial training projects?
So if I submitted a soil sample 2 years ago for a site, is that
Still good. Yeah, you're good. Yeah. Unless you've like just dumped all the lime on it. Okay.
How
Yeah.
long generally will they be good for?
It's almost more like how much have you done, right? Because if I tested now and I tested in 5 years and I did nothing in the middle, I think it'd be very similar. But if I applied a bunch of lime or applied a bunch of fertilizer, those are the chemical components of soil, it would have changed, right? Yeah.
The existing potential plants listing again. So for existing, do you want us to list things that are existing that we're going to get rid of? Or is it just existing that we want to stay and the potential that we want to have?
I think typically we've had you mostly list things that are existing that you're going to keep, but I think it's nice to give a brief overview of some of the stuff you're going to get rid of, or maybe why you're going to get rid of it. But I don't know that it needs really the same amount of detail. What we're really trying to get you to do is just ID a bunch of, some number of things, and then also give some proposals, you know? Yeah.
Can I get a chance to look at those projects? I was talking to
Oh, yeah.
with Mark.
Yeah, totally.
Totally forgot.
This is a great question. So those training projects that we have laid out, we will lay them out multiple other days. Like they will be laid out a fair bit, and we always keep them in the Master Gardener office. So if you ever want to swing by, or you want to stay late, or you want to do whatever, we have them. You can look through them. You can look through them as much as you want. Most of them we do only have like those copies. So, and I don't know. We didn't get everyone to agree that we could just upload them. So we're gonna keep them as physical copies, but you can look at them whenever you want, basically. Yeah. And that can be really helpful to kind of orient yourself. And know that those are like good to very good. Like I want you guys to understand that that's what we're telling you. They're good to very good. You know your own schedule and how much work you can handle. You know, whether you need to be A++. Yeah. Yes.
will we be able to see those same ones or other ones?
Those same ones.
Right.
Yeah, those same ones are the ones we're going to be laying out and we're going to keep in the office. So you can like cruise through them whenever you want. And it might be that you look at it one time and you notice one thing and you look at another thing and you're like, oh shoot, I didn't even see that. You know. Yeah.
So this is more for the final than the initial, I think, is just how much are we thinking we're going to have actually in the ground? This is mostly a plan, yeah?
Yeah, so the question is like, do you have to do this? Like actually apply it.
Like in that time frame.
No, man.
Around the last frost.
I don't care what happens in your yard. Like I just, it's not. No, that's between you and your landscape. is just the plan. And remember, like, we're asking for the plan or even the assessment of what you already have and how you care for it. It doesn't have to be a plan. It can be assessment of what you already have. We're trying to get you to think through the motions. No one's coming, like, we're not doing, like, drive-by scoping out of your property to, like, make sure it's there.
You don't have a drive?
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to do that in all our free time. No, so it's really just to kind of show that you know how to think through it in a way that's useful for you. Yeah. Yeah. All right, I'm going to give it a couple more minutes because I know sometimes thoughts bubble up. But
So if we have thoughts.
Yes.
And we have like a couple of potential areas of the yard to focus on.
Yeah.
Is there, I know you mentioned there were like people who are going to be project mentors or something like that.
Whoa.
I don't know if that was the word, if that might not have been the word, but like you have people who are like project oriented or something. Like, is there somebody we can bounce these ideas off of or be like, would it be terrible to try and do something with this space? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I am going to give people a minute if they want to answer that, and if not, I will always, you can always do that with me. Is there anyone else?
Yeah, sure, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Any of these folks, you can bounce those ideas off of. I didn't want to be like, you can call Bev and Barbara, if they didn't agree to it. So I would go to them first because a number of them have also worked really hard on that document, like the prompt, getting it really ready and really good. So they're always really, really good. Worst case scenario, you can always ask me. No, it's not worst case scenario. You can always ask me. You can always ask me. Yeah.
If we do it, and I'm sure it's in the somewhere, but if we do it like an online version,
Yeah.
where we turn it in, do you want us to print it out? Or?
No, you can email it to me.
Okay.
By the deadline? Yeah, if you have an online submission, you can email it to me. And remember, like, this can be a series of spreadsheets with a README doc. This can be written up. This can be construction paper and glue. Like, I don't care what this is. Like, it's something that makes sense to you that's intelligible to us, right? Like, we do have to be able to go through it and check off that you've done your things, right? You have that check sheet at the end. But however you want to format that, I want it to be useful and make sense for you. Yeah.
If part of your challenge is the sun, so if we're doing sun solar matters now, it's going to be different after.
And that's in the prompt. Yeah. So yeah, totally. No, and that's so what we do ask you to look at is to look at sun and then to also describe to us how it will be different at different points in the year. And we know that's.
How are you going to know?
I feel bad saying this because it sounds like I'm being smart and I'm not trying to be smart, but like the sun's fairly predictable. So like, the sun is low now, but we actually can say, it's almost up, like high in the sky in the summer. So if I were to look at the shadows now, because we're relatively close still to December 22nd, to turnover basically, it's still pretty low. So I could map all that now. And there's some fancy resources in your packet, and I'll send you an additional one today that we covered in a different talk recently. But you could also be kind of loose and say, like, sun's here now, sun's basically here now, so I know that my shadows change pretty drastically. They get much shorter, right? And you could approximate that. So
with the leafing of the trees.
Yeah. Yeah, because say this wall is a tree, and it's as tall as the white part. Right? Right now, all that sun is actually, a lot of it's going to get through because there's no leaves on the trees. But even if it were super high, that's still true. Even if it were a super tall tree. Pointing this way because this way is south. I'm orienting to the south. In the middle of the summer, I'd still be in shade here probably because I'm like literally under the canopy, but once I step out from under the canopy, the sun comes so straight down that shadow that maybe would have been to this wall now might go to just under the canopy, right? And that's just the kind of predictable change of how sun works. But I will send you also some additional resources on that. And look through the manuals as well to show how they do that. Because some people are very technical and they've like pulled up an app and it's like mapped it for them and they're, and some people are like, the shadows will be shorter. I expect them to be more like this. And we're like, good, you thought about it. You understand that shadows, right? And that's what I'm trying to say, like, I'm not trying to be glib. It's just that you can take it to any level of detail you want. What we need you to know is the shadows are going to be shorter in the summer. Yeah. All right. Oh, Barbara.
Just a reminder of one other thing. In one of the classes, February the 13th, what we're going to do during that class, during this period, is create small groups and think about what your project will be like. And perhaps there's a couple other people who are doing the same thing. So what we want to do is get you together to talk about it. Okay? And we'll have people coming around and talking with you as well there. So on the February 13th class, we'll have these small groups.
Yeah.
That gives you an opportunity to find out what other people are doing.
Yeah. It's a huge part of it being a master gardener is leaning on each other, right? Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I'll send out your follow-up email later today. Please turn in your surveys and have a great week. Thank you.